Tonight we'll be talking about scrying using mirrors, in particular black scrying mirrors. Our guest is Lisa Krick, a well-known figure in the paranormal world and just a very lovely person. And she has studied black mirror scrying under the late great Rosemary Ellen Guiley. And for those of us in the paranormal field for a long time, this lady Rosemary was just amazing, and her protege Lisa is too. So I'm very happy to have her with us. She has traveled the country sharing her knowledge of Black Mirror scrying with others, and tonight she's going to share some of that information with us. So, Lisa, for those that don't know, exactly what is a scrying mirror?
So a scrying mirror is basically a reflective surface. When we talk about a black mirror or a dark mirror scrying, it looks like this. So it's highly reflective. And as I was sitting getting ready for this meeting tonight, I was looking at my tablet and I didn't have it on because I'm like moving some files and I went, you can actually scry into your tablet because it's a dark reflective surface. Honestly, you can scry off of anything that reflects. Even if it doesn't reflect, you can look at the clouds and gather pictures from that. It's only as you're only stopping yourself through your own imagination with what you can use to scry with. But for my purposes, I teach people on a dark or a black scrying mirror because it's the easiest way to learn it.
Well, what is the history of mirrors in divination? Because there's so many ways to divine the future, and people forget that we also use these methods to get in touch with the past, for someone or for ourselves, right? So it's like it's a portal, isn't it, to all of the dimensions and all of time itself. So what's the short history of mirrors being used in divination?
Sure. Scrying dates back to at least ancient civilizations of the Egyptians, the Celts, the Greeks, the Native Americans. The earliest historical reference that I've been able to find is the ancient Babylonians. So we're looking at somewhere around 1800. They call it BCE now. We used to call it before Christ, but whatever, however you wanted to determine that. 1800 years before we started timing time. So it's really, really old. And the Babylonians would put oil and water together in like a bowl and they would look at it that way. And that's how they started scrying. So most of the scrying started with water and then they moved to mere shards of glass and mirror and things like that until we have what we have today. Back in the 16th century, John Dee was an astrologer to Queen Elizabeth I. And if you go to the Museum of British History, you can still see his scrying mirror there. I haven't been there yet, but that's on my bucket list, absolutely. Another 16th century scryer was Nostradamus, and he would scry with a black mirror. The only other really famous personage that I talk to people about as scrying was Walt Disney used it in Snow White, the evil queen, magic mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all. She was scrying in this. She was using magic in a children's cartoon, which I think is really cool because people are like, you get that influence of, oh, we're not going to put magic into the. He was doing it. He was doing it.
I love that. I have to ask, what is your definition of magic? Because believe it or not, it does change from practitioner to practitioner, whether you use a special gift for scrying or whether you are working with the elements. So, what's your definition?
Normally, if I'm doing this by myself at home, I do call on the elements. So I do use the traditional definition of magic at that time. If I am out at a paranormal investigation and I want to turn people on to scrying, I'll just pull people in. Hey, you want to learn how to do this? Come here. And I use mirrors that the venue has already on the walls because I figure that's the best that's the best mirror to use. It's already in the house, it's already in the location, it's already soaking in all that history. And I don't do anything except for ground myself and protect myself. I don't really consider that magic. That's just something I do, some self care that I do. And I make sure that the people around me are grounded and protected as well before we start in. So I guess the only time I use magic per se is when I'm creating the mirrors. I put a sigil on there for protection and for intent. And I, because I'm the one creating the mirrors, it's got my woo woo in it, my energy. And then I also will cleanse them under a full moon. The first time I'll consecrate and cleanse them under a full moon. So I guess I do use more magic than I think I do.
When you begin to think about it. All right, having worked with Rosemary, and you can tell that I am a fangirl. In fact, she wrote the introduction for my first book, and I cannot, I can always never say enough about that lady because she took time out of an extremely busy career to do something for someone who had never authored before, right? Who had never written a book. But what was the tip or trick that you learned from her that has stayed with you and kind of opened your eyes to the power of this type of divination?
Probably the tip or trick that I've learned from her really doesn't even have to do with scrying. It's just who she was as a person and what she was as a person, because like you said, she took time out of a busy life to help someone. And ever since I've known her, I've gosh, I've been investigating for over 20 years, and I've known her that entire time until she passed. And actually she still works with me today. But I don't doubt that she's with us tonight going, Lisa. But she has always been the kind of person that you can ask a question and it's never a stupid question. And she'll take time to explain. She'll take time to tell you the right way to do it in the most gentle way that she can. There have been times when she's like, don't do that. We used to, when we were really new and we were watching TV, trying to learn how to investigate from TV, which is a no no because they do it all wrong for TV. But, we'd be like, well, I'm trying to communicate with somebody, we're like, use my energy. And she is like, do not ever tell anybody to use your energy. And we're like, why? So she would take the time to explain things. And it's the same thing with scrying. You have to take the time to explain things in a way that people understand. You have to be gentle with people because not everybody does this every day. This is new for a lot of people. And if you can teach people what intent is and how to use any of your tools with intent and with grace, that's probably the best thing that I learned from Rosemary was do everything you do with intention and with grace and with for the highest good.
And if you approach everything that you do with that idea of doing it for the highest good, then we have these really positive outcomes. It doesn't mean that you're a Pollyanna and you're running into the metaphysical world without knowledge. In fact, that's the one thing, and I'm sure that you do too, is to learn your craft, whatever that is. If it's divination, learn, the importance of grounding, centering, and learn how to do those things, and then the types of protection that you may need for that. All right, for those of us who have an interest in this sort of thing in history, or maybe in your own practice or in the practice of others that you have seen, what what are one or two stories that you can tell about using black scrying mirrors and having the results? Uh, you know, I mean, without a doubt, you were able to see either the past or the future.
Um, I don't believe that I've seen the future. And if I have, it hasn't happened yet. So at that point, I'll go, oh, hey, that was that. But normally, I see the past and I don't ask for any, when I set my intentions, I just set my intentions for the greatest good. I don't set them for specific because I think that narrows my focus too much, and it doesn't allow for me to learn what I'm supposed to learn, I don't think. So a couple of instances that I had actually both happened at the Randolph County Infirmary in Indiana, in northern Indiana. One of the first times I ever did a scrying in front of somebody besides Rosemary at the Randolph County, they had this big mirror in the basement. And I mean, it was a big mirror and it was up against the wall. And I said, I'm gonna try to scry down here. And so I went down there, and I had some people standing around me, behind me, and the room was almost completely dark. And in that room, I'll usually see shadows come up behind me. And there's normally an angel that will come up behind me, and you can see the wings. It presents with wings, presents itself as female. And normally I would see that. And then there were other shadows that would come up, or, your face would go completely dark. But what was really cool about this session was I was asking for anybody to step through that had a message for any of the people in the room with me. And this woman steps forward in my mind's eye. I couldn't see her in the mirror. I saw her in my mind's eye. She steps forward and she looked like Laura Petrie from the Dick Van Dyke Show. So she looked like Mary Tyler Moore in pedal pushers and that hairstyle and the white shirt, white button down shirt. And I'm like, this is who I'm getting. This is who she looks like. I get total body chills even still telling the story. And I'm like, does anybody know who this might be? I said, I see her in color, but she's in color like it would be from the 70s, the early 70s. And so that's the time frame that this woman is from. And this woman goes, that sounds like my mom. And I'm like, okay. And so we talked a little bit back and forth, and I'm like, she's opening her arms like she wants to hug you. And I don't do the psychic thing enough that I have symbols that come to me for, like, a rose is for love and this and that. So I'm still learning that process. So I'm telling her, I'm like, she's coming to you with love and this, that, and the other. And I said, and I don't feel comfortable still asking them questions. And I should, because they presented themselves. So I should be able to ask them questions. But at this point, I really wasn't. So I said, okay, is there anybody else that wants to pop through? And I saw this, and this one was in black and white, also in my mind's eye. There was this tiny little Italian woman. She called herself Nana. And I'm like, it looks like somebody's grandma. She's wearing a house dress, but it's in black and white. That's the way I see her. So I can tell you that this woman is probably from the 40s or so. And she's got her hair up in a bun. And I've just described her. And this other person said, that sounds like my Nana, my grandmother. She was Italian. And I'm like, okay, that's very cool. And then she said, is my mom there with her? And Nana shakes her head, and I go, no, but now that doesn't mean that she's not there, just that it's not time for you to talk to her. Cause I don't want to make people sad or upset, or, it just wasn't the time for mom to step through. Nana wanted to. So then I said, okay, is there anybody else coming through that would like to make contact with any of the people? And I said, how about animals? Because I have a pretty good, I can always get animals to pop through. And I said, how about my boy dog? Because my boy dog has never contacted me since he's passed. All my girls have, my boy hasn't. And I said, how about Mackie? You want to pop through? And I see this black Scottish terrier pop up. That's not my boy dog. And I went, oh my God. Okay. I said, what I'm seeing is a black Scottish terrier. Can you give me your name, little terrier? And I'm hearing Angus. And then somebody behind me goes, that's my Angus. And I'm like, are you kidding me right now? So we took a break. We went upstairs and we sat down. And I'm not kidding you. The two people with the Nana and the mom brought me pictures, and it was exactly what I saw in my mind's eye. The exact, wearing the same clothes and everything. To me, that was validation that, whoa, this stuff really works. I really need to delve deeper into this.
It's interesting that you saw her in her time. so to speak, colored by her time, because the way that we connect with different energies, it's different for all of us, right? And I think that's why, when we talk about science and wanting to quantify everything, it's so difficult to think about how we can do that and the variables involved, because when we talk about frequencies that different people have, at that moment, you may be in have been in a different kind of vibrational frequency than you normally are, right? And so that's why you received that message, and it's why for some people they can't readily duplicate, right, the experience. But the longer that you do it, the longer that you practice, it becomes easier and easier to whatever variables we are getting, which really one of them is trance. It's putting ourselves into a light trance, right? And I read once where 80% of paranormal occurrences reported are reported when someone is either in a very resting state or when someone is like in bed, ready for bed, right? And that's where a lot of people, when their loved one has passed, they may come to visit that evening. And it's usually when they're very relaxed in that straight state of trance between wakefulness and being asleep, which I find fascinating. But yeah, there's so many variables, but the one that I have noticed with me and with others like yourself when I talk with you is that need for trance. When we can lower our energy, right? Which is what we're doing. We're lowering the way that our synapses are just firing off in the brain. And there's these different levels. So when we are lowering ourselves, alpha, theta, all of these frequencies, then we are able to let go of the physical and really focus on the spiritual, right? And I know that that has gotten such a bad rap when we talk about spiritual. I heard someone say yesterday they wish that they hadn't have linked that to a lot of paranormal occurrences that have been found to be false, because it smears that whole idea of the spirit and you know connection with the spirit in a bad paintbrush, if you will, or color. But anyway, for you, now how long have you been using the black scrying mirror, and why were you drawn to that particular divination tool?
I've probably been using it off and on for about 15 years. I think it's probably been that long, maybe 10, somewhere between 10 and 15. And Rosemary introduced me to it. And it was, I just wanted to, so she would come every year to the Haunted America conference that Troy Taylor puts on. And she always did an after hours event. And this was one of the things that she did. And I think it was the year that, and I don't remember when that was, but she has a book called The Art of Black Mirror Scrying, and you can still get that today. And I think that book had just come out, and she decided to teach a workshop on it. So I was like, yeah, I'm going to take her workshop. I don't care what she teaches. I want to take her workshops because she's just an amazing teacher. So we took the workshop, and I was like, this is pretty cool. This is, I might, and the first time I did it, I didn't really get a lot, and a lot of people don't. And what I tell people during the workshop that I teach is it's a skill, just like anything else, just like shooting free throws or whatever. It's a skill, and you have to practice it to get better at it. Not everybody's a natural. Not everybody can pick up a mirror and just dive right in. It takes some practice. So the first time you do it, you might get a little bit, you might not get anything. But I always tell people that you get the experience that you are meant to have. You get the vision or the smell or the sound or whatever the experience is that you are meant to have. And it's not always for you. It may be for somebody else in the room. I have that happen a lot in my workshops. Somebody will have a vision or see something in the mirror or hear something, or it will trickle down and they'll say, this sounds really stupid and I don't know what it means. And then they'll say it, and somebody else it will mean everything to that person. And I'm like, you were meant to read for this person. That's just what it is. But I've been really lucky with my groups that almost everybody has some sort of experience. And I think it's because I try to make it as relaxed an environment as I can. We practice it 3, 4, 5 times, and then I let them go on their own. So yeah, because I really want people to get the hang of what it is supposed to be like. And I tell them also, if you're somebody who goes under very easily, you may not want to do this at home unless you have somebody there to pull you out, because you could get stuck, you could bring back a hitchhiker. There are all kinds of things that can happen if you, even if you ground and protect, there's a chance that things will go sideways and you'll bring back a hitchhiker. So if you're new at it, especially, I recommend you do not do it alone at home.
I agree. I think that's good. That's good advice. And another thing I always recommend to people, if you are in a certain state of emotional turmoil, never ever reach out in any sense to the other world, because you don't know what doors you may be opening. And the fact that you are in a negative mindset, there's a saying in the metaphysical, like attracts like. So you may be attracting really negative energy to you without realizing that you're doing it. So yeah, try to be careful. And this is a great tip that you're giving. Are there other tips? And I don't want you to give all your secrets, because our lovely Lisa here, you want to catch her workshop. Where are you going to be next, Lisa? Where you'll be?
I don't have anything on the books for the rest of the year. So,
Oh, well,
completely open, people.
well, Lisa, yeah. Were you at Scarefest last year?
I was not. No,
For
no.
some reason, I thought you.
No, my friend Scott Tepperman was at Scarefest because we had a movie that we premiered there, and
Movie.
I think he'll Cruel Summer 3 premiered there, and he'll
How cool.
probably have Cruel Summer 4 there this year because actually this weekend is the premiere in Tallahassee. So,
Hmm.
but yeah, no, it's been a while since I've been at Scarefest. I would love to hit the circuit and do some things before the spooky season's over. But
Hmm.
for me, spooky season's all year round. The
Hmm.
veil is thin all year round for me.
Hmm.
It is what it is.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, exactly. And I agree with that. I do think, though, that for us, it's wide open, but there are those spirits I feel that may have, and this is just my opinion, that are harder to reach. For instance, if someone is extremely religious, when they pass, they are the same person on the other side, so they might be a bit more hesitant to communicate with someone like us.
yep.
But yes, so I think that it does make it a little bit easier, maybe, to make that contact during that time. But I'm very, and you are too. I bet you have a lot of what we call Celtic blood from our ancestors, right? The bloodline, right? Yeah, I'm 40% Scots and then 22% German. And it's interesting because the Celts were just tribes, right? That ran from the Celtic Isles all the way through Germany. And so if you're from anywhere in that area as far as your heritage, then that is definitely part of your bloodline. And there are certain things that some of us are good at. It's like I call myself a latter-day granny woman, because or a granny witch, right? Because they would call us that. Not back in the day. Back in the day, you would not accept that moniker, right? Granny witch, because it meant that you would be the other, you would be ostracized. But the woman over the mountain may say, because I remember my granny saying, I need to go see that old granny witch. And I thought it was so funny because my granny was a granny woman, right? That's right. But She would go deliver babies. I mean, she knew how to heal just taking what we had in the mountains. And then I always said Granny could go out in the mountains and she would come back with things to heal you and to feed you. As long as Granny was around, and I was so blessed that she taught me some of what she knows before she left this world. But now, are there any safety concerns? You touched on it just briefly, but are there any safety concerns that in your tips for people that they need to know about before they try something like this?
hmm Safety concerns. Know that this is not a toy. This is not a game. It is a tool to be used for communication with the other side. This tool can be used to divine information from the past, from the present, from the future. It depends on how you use it, what your intentions are. Make sure that you come at it from a good space with good intentions. And like you said, don't do this when you're tired. Don't do this when you're sick. Don't do this when you're angry. You need to be in the right state of mind, because whether you ground yourself and protect yourself or not, if you're in one of those states, it's probably going to go sideways. You're probably going to pick up a hitchhiker. You're probably going to bring somebody through that you really didn't want to bring, because you're vibrating at a lower frequency, and like attracts like. So make sure that you always ground. Make sure that you always set your intentions. Make sure that you protect yourself in whatever way that is. If you want to say a prayer, if you want to pray to God, that's fine. If you want to pray to Jesus, that's fine. If you want to pray to the saints, that's fine. If you want to pray to the gods, choose a god or gods, that's fine. Whatever your religious affiliation is and makes you safe in your spirituality, that's who you appeal to. I normally will I pull them all in, because why not? But I'm always pulling in my guides, my angels, my ancestors, and my higher self in with that. I call that my soul tribe. And my soul tribe is always with me. I can tell because my hands they get really tingly. So they're with me right now because they're but yeah, I'll take like a deep cleansing breath, and just as I breathe in, I picture light coming in through the top of my head, and we use chakras, and it goes down all the way through my chakras, down through my legs, down through my feet. And it's like I'm pulling roots where I stand, and I dig my toes in, and I dig my roots in as deep as I can. I hold my breath. And when I hold my breath, I bring that light up back through my body, and I'll wash it through a couple of times. And then I'll push it out through my chest, through my heart, and surround myself. And that's when I'm calling in my tribe. And I do that 3 times. I don't have to do it 3 times, because normally by the second time my hands are tingling and I know that they're here with me. But I do it 3 times just for habit, and just because, I don't know, I think it's the right thing to do. Even though I know they're already there, I want that third time, because for me, it's the right thing to do. And then I ask for their help, and I ask for their protection. And that's a tip that I would say. Whatever makes you comfortable and happiest and easiest. It doesn't have to be a whole formal ritual. I mean, it is a ritual, but it doesn't have to be a formal ritual. You don't have to call the corners. You don't have to. It's whatever. It's whatever vibes with you and works with you. That's what you do, if that makes sense.
Well, you know what I love, Lisa, when I listen to somebody talk, like you have many, many years in the field, so to speak. And it always amazes me how we are drawn to do things and we may not know why, right? Like your mantra, saying it 3 different times. But 3 is the number for God. Father, Son, Holy Ghost, made Mother Crone, right? So it's almost like a completion of a prayer to the higher power by reciting it 3 times. I love that. Um, Now, have you, over the course of, you're working with Black scrying mirrors. Have you ever had an uncomfortable situation yourself?
Yeah, and it's not been alone. I like to scry with other people because I like the energy that it creates. And I have a friend who I scry with who denies his gifts. But he's got him anyway, so every once in a while I'll drag him in. His father was a Native American background, and he's tried to dabble in that, but he scares himself and he doubts himself. He's amazingly gifted. So I dragged him in at Randolph County, and we sat in front of the mirror, and this thing came up between us, and it didn't feel good. I don't know what it was, but it was just a dark figure that came up between us, and then it completely blacked out the room. We couldn't see each other. We couldn't see the mirror. We couldn't see anything except for that figure behind us. And I said, I see something behind us. And then I say, he said, I do too. And I said, will you describe it to me? And he saw the exact same thing that I did. It was just really big, like the angel, but really big and almost void is the way I would describe it. Just the absence of, rather than, so I don't know, just void is how I would describe it. Darker than dark, blacker than black. Other people saw it behind us as well, and I could hear people whispering in the background, "Oh my gosh, I can't see anything. The room just went completely dark." And I asked it what it was, what its intentions were, what it wanted, and it wouldn't say anything. It just stood there, and I said, "I don't like the way this is making me feel." And Jim said, I don't like this either. I said, well, then we need to stop this. We need to break out of this session, and we need to end this session and send them back where it came from. So that's another thing. When you end a session, you need to end it like you do with any other tool that you work with a spirit board, with an audio recorder. People don't think about when they're investigating, when they run an audio session to try to get EVP, you're using a tool. You're asking something to come through and communicate with you. Anytime you communicate with the other side, you need to end sessions and you need to put things back the way they were, or you've left a portal open, regardless of the tool that you're using. So we ended the session and closed it down. And I actually got a really great tip from you guys. Where were we? I think we were at one of Troy's conferences, and y'all were talking about the mirrors in the house. If they face each other, they create a portal. If they're in your bedroom, you really don't want them in there. So what you guys told me was that you can put a little cross on each of the corners and just say, you are not a portal, you are only a mirror, and close it down that way. It doesn't have to be elaborate. You just have to speak from the heart and speak with intention. So that's another thing that I tell people. I tell people, please don't have a mirror in your bedroom. But if you have to have a mirror in your bedroom, then close it down, because you have no idea what you're letting in while you sleep.
There's a beautiful soul, you know her, and I'm pretty sure, and that's Victoria J. And
Mm-hmm.
she wrote a thesis, her master's thesis, I think. In fact, she has about, demons and demonology, and, they're interacting with people. And she really feels that she was oppressed for a while. And she feels that it was because she had a mirror directly in front of her bed. And that's right. And that is how this thing entered into her life. Her name is Victoria J, and she has a new book. Well, it's actually a book that had been published before based on her research, but has been republished by Haunted America, Troy Taylor, and it is called The Black Hours. So if anyone is interested in that, finding out more about this subject, then that is definitely a book I would recommend. And we were talking about mirror magic in general. And actually, this is my latest book. It's Moon Magic, Mirror Magic, and the Witch's Ladder. So So anyways, it's three things. It's a short read, and this is like mirror work for shadow integration. And we know that we do have to go sometimes to our darker selves, right? To explore that. And in my case, I do it so I can be a better person, to be honest with you. When you're honest with yourself about the things that you need to explore in your, the darker recesses of our personalities and souls, I truly feel that it can make us better people, right? Um,
Right.
all right, unfortunately, we have to wrap this up. Lisa, you have been just such a pleasure, but I knew you would be. Are there anything else that you would like people to know about dark mirrors? And folks, I realize I'm not going as deep into tips and tricks as maybe I would, but I want you, if you ever see this woman's name on the agenda or schedule anywhere, take her class. I promise you, she's got such a depth of knowledge about the subject. You're sure to learn something, and also how to open and close and safely use this mirror that you may be using. And if you'll notice, even someone with all of the experience that our Lisa has, still something was able to slip by and give her a very uncomfortable experience because she does have the experience and the skill and the knowledge. She was able to close that down and not end up with something like an attachment to take home. And she was able to do that, clear the room, and no one was bothered or hurt, or no one woke up in the middle of the night when they got back home and saw something in the room that they had brought home with them, right? So learn all that you can learn, and Lisa is one of the people to learn that from. So is there anything else that you would like to say before we wrap up?
A, a couple of things. If you can take one of my workshops somewhere sometime, I would love to give you the knowledge that I have and also gain knowledge from you, because we all gain knowledge from everybody we meet. There is a book called Haunted Travels that I am featured in. It's by Sam Baltrusis. He curated it. He's got a story in it. I have a story in it. This is volume 1. We're working on volume 2 right now. What else? You can get, I also read oracle cards. You can hit me up through Facebook, Oracle Readings by Lisa. That's my passion, is reading cards for people and helping people in that way. But I'm also happy to scry with you, for you, and about you.
Tell you what, I got these new cards. We're going to do just a little something right here, okay? Here's the first one. I want you to look at it. There's the
Okay.
second one, and here is the third one. So, do any of these have an appeal to you
I like the one there's two in your hand and it's on the top.
on the top? Then let us see what, because I truly do believe that if we seek messages, then we receive those messages, right? I mean, how can people like us, not believe that, right?
Right.
Okay, here it is. You are not stagnant. Okay, you are not stagnant. The transformation is just happening within. So even though you have, you're not out there, hitting the circuit right now, there's a lot of change that is happening within you, and I'm sure it's on the spiritual level as well as other levels. All right.
Chills. That hit home. Right on.
I love it. I'm going to tell you, in the mountains, and I'm sure where you're at, because every area has its granny women, right?
Mhm.
It has its special people. But in the mountains, my grandma, now she was 6'4", believe it or not, my great granny. She was
Oh my
Nanny Kraus.
goodness.
Nanny Kraus, that's where some of that 22% of German in me comes from. But Nanny Kraus, 6'4", an amazing woman. And I got to tell you a little story about her because it's through her bloodline that I get my gifts. But back in the mountains, you didn't get any what we called learning if you were a woman. You might go to the third grade, maybe if you were lucky, but at the fourth grade, I think it was, they had to start buying books and things like that. And people were really, when I talk about poor, people have no idea, in the present, what these women went through just to survive, right? And how they knew to survive and use what they had. But she prayed and she prayed. She was they were very religious. And she prayed and said, Lord, If you'll just let me read, if you'll just let me read, I promise for the rest of my life I'll only read the good book. And the good book, as you know, the Bible, is a very difficult book to read, even for people who love to read. Do you know that woman woke up one day and she could read? And for the rest of her life, she never read anything but the Bible. But here's what I find fascinating. Bibliomancy, we talked about different types of divination, like what we just did here, right? And I truly feel that you get the answers when you ask for them, when you look for them. She would use the Bible and she would ask a question and open the Bible for the answer, right? And I always found that fascinating how much magic was in the household on a day-to-day basis, and they really didn't think of it that way. But certainly, if you would look at it in those terms, it was there. Um, but anyway, Lisa, you've been a pleasure. And to all of our listeners, thank you so much for joining us because without you, it becomes a very lonely place. And so, until next time, stay curious.